Okay, we're ready to start our final session of day one. We'll turn it over to our moderator, Juhi Dhawan. Juhi?
Thanks so much, Chris. Good evening to everyone here on the East Coast joining in. Good afternoon to those on the West Coast, and good morning to those in Asia. I'm Juhi Dhawan, macro strategist at Wellington Management and a member of the NABE board. It is truly my pleasure to act as host of this excellent session on environmental sustainability and urban resilience. Let me spend a couple of minutes introducing our guest today, Professor Joseph Hun-wei Lee from the Macau University of Science and Technology. Professor Lee is currently president and chair professor of the Macau University of Science and Technology. He is a native of Hong Kong and obtained his BSc, MSc, and PhD degrees from MIT in my hometown of Boston in the United States. He's a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering in the United Kingdom and the Hong Kong Academy of Engineering Sciences. He has previously served as vice president at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and vice president at the University of Hong Kong. Professor Lee is the president of the International Association for Hydro Environment Engineering and Research, being the first Chinese to be elected into this position in its 85 years of history. He is the founding editor-in-chief for the Journal of Hydro Environment Research. Professor Lee's contributions in water environment engineering have been recognized by multiple awards. You have all of those details in your in the detailed bio, and I can only say that my personal experience in speaking with him over the last few days has been his knowledge is simply phenomenal. And so we are really excited to hear from him today how technology can help us solve some of the challenges that climate change is posing for us in all parts of the world. So over to Professor Lee, and he will speak for about 20-25 minutes, and then there'll be time enough for Q&A. So Professor Lee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Juhi. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here today to talk about how engineering innovation and AI can be used to enhance environmental sustainability and urban resilience. So first of all, I'd like to give a geographical setting. I'm from Macau, and Macau and Hong Kong are two special administrative regions of China at the mouth of the Pearl River estuary, and in the middle of this, what is called the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. And the idea is that this area will develop to be a center of innovation and technology hub, connecting 11 cities, all within 1 hour travel distance of high quality living, and in which green development it will be much emphasized. And recently, the China State Council announced its plan for the university, Macau University of Science and Technology is one of the two universities in Macau, tasked to be a keynote of this GBA Innovation Hub. And AI and environmental sustainability will be a MUST focus. So I'm a water engineer. I've been working closely with the Hong Kong government over the past 2 to 3 decades, applying our basic research on fluid mechanics to solve climate change-induced impacts. So today I'd like to give 2 examples that we've contributed to sustainable development to Hong Kong, and both are related to adaptation to climate change. First, innovative stormwater management in a big megacity, and secondly, AI, how AI can be used to enhance fisheries management in combat of harmful algae blooms, and this has a lot to do with food security. So first of all, Hong Kong we've been witnessing impacts of climate change over the past 2 decades, I would say. We have an annual rainfall of about 2,400 millimeters per hour, but over the past 2 decades, we've been seeing more and more extreme rainfalls with more than 100 millimeters per hour So what it means is you get very strong flash floods, and it's accentuated by sea level rise, this global warming. And this is just an example of a distribution of rainfall with time, meaning that in 1 hour the whole village can be wiped out, in times of rain, very heavy, severe rain, and especially if the rain occurs on the hilly slopes, then you can get landslides, creating hazardous conditions next to very expensive property. So whenever such a heavy rain occurs in a mega city, you get cars underwater, people underwater, shops underwater. And so the strategy where we've developed jointly with the government in Hong Kong is a three-pronged strategy. First, upstream interception. We intercept the stormwater as much as we can into an underground tunnel for discharge to the sea. Secondly, in midstream, we provide storage. We explain what that means. And then downstream with upgrade. And not any one of these strategies would work alone. We need a combination of these three strategies. So I'll briefly talk about the innovation behind this, the techniques behind it. So first of all, innovative flood management. So basically, we've designed a stormwater interception, transfer, and storage system to adapt to climate change impacts. And it's been proven to work in very severe typhoons, even in Super Typhoon Manga in 2018, and pretty much the whole city was protected from floods. So the idea is that, so this is a top view of Hong Kong Island. You see this very hilly terrain. And the idea is we build a system of 34 what we call Vortex Index. So basically, we want the stormwater to swirl into this Vortex Index into 100 meters beneath the ground level and conveyed by a tunnel for discharge to the sea. So it's an upstream diversion of storm flow into a deep tunnel system versus these vortex drop shafts. So these dots are these vortex drop shafts where we designed it very precisely on the terrain in the mid-levels, what we call mid-levels, in other words, in the upstream catchment interception. Now, the difficulty, the engineering challenge is that how do you design the system to a very, very high speed, 10 meters per second, 100 cubic meters per second, and for each of these streams next to very expensive property, you're talking about something like 20 cubic meters per second. And you think you can, 1 cubic meter is like a ton, it's like a car. So you can think of 20 cars per second moving by, and you need to somehow convey this very smoothly and stably 100 meters down. And so this is the optimal design is derived from a combination of theory, heuristic reasoning, and experiments. And this is just shows you a CFD a simulation where of the very complex three-dimensional turbulent air water flow. And you can think of it as a very, very high-speed bathroom vortex. Most of you have seen a bathroom vortex and you say, well, what's the big deal? But this is a bathroom vortex shooting down at 10 meters per second, and it turns out to be a very, very complicated problem. So this is upstream interception. We figure out how to do this stably and smoothly, safely into the underground tunnel. Now, the second strategy, which you need both, is a storage scheme. And just to illustrate the idea of a storage scheme, basically you can build an underground tank, let's say underneath a playground, and then when the flood comes, you just store the needed portion of it at the right time to be discharged back into the system later. So this is actually the idea. So you have an underground weir system. So when the flood comes, you can store part of it at the right time to provide a buffer. And the success very much depends on precise engineering. Exactly, you store it at the time that is needed. And the advantage is very sustainable. After it's built, you won't even know it existed. It's very robust. it has public support, etc. So it's sustainable in every sense of the word. So in this particular case, we extended this storage idea and built a Happy Valley underground storage scheme directly underneath the horse racing course. And those of you who know Hong Kong has over 150 years of racing history, and this is part of the culture to have a horse race Wednesday night in this very place. So I'll show you a 2-minute video which illustrates the concept.
Happy Valley in Hong Kong is a low-lying area surrounded by hills on 3 sides. During heavy rainstorms, runoff from the vast uphill catchment caused flooding at Happy Valley and its adjoining coastal districts, seriously affecting the life of the residents. To solve the flooding problem, the Drainage Services Department of the Government of the Special Administrative Region constructed drainage tunnels at the upstream of the urban area to intercept runoff, as well as implemented this underground stormwater storage scheme in Happy Valley. The scope of this project includes a 2.4 hectare storage tank with a capacity of 60,000 cubic meters, a newly constructed box culvert connecting the upstream and downstream existing drains, movable weirs, a stormwater pump house, and a fan room, etc. During heavy rainstorms, stormwater runoff is temporarily stored in the storage tank, relieving the downstream drainage system. Different from the traditional storage tanks, this project features numerous innovative designs, including movable weirs, water harvesting system, and opening up the at-grade space of flood prevention facilities in a site-specific manner for public use. These designs echo the concept of Sponge City to promote sustainable development. The system makes use of 3 water level sensors at the upstream, downstream, and within the storage tank to monitor the water level in real time and automatically adjust the level of the movable weirs so as to control the time of stormwater overflowing into the tank. The system also reads the sea level measured from the tide gauges. When the sea level is high, the weirs will automatically close to prevent backflow of seawater into the storage tank.
So that was the idea of a three-pronged strategy that proved to work in Hong Kong to enhance urban resilience. Now, the second topic I'd like to talk about is food security, harmful algae blooms, and fisheries management. And just a few facts: Asia accounts for 90% of world's agricultural production, which supplies 50% of the world's food fish consumption. And the fact is that there's a lot in Hong Kong. There's banning of fish trawling, and essentially there's a need to intensify agriculture production worldwide. And of course, fisheries management is faced with threats of pollution, water security, and harmful algae blooms. These are just examples of these fish farms we call fish culture zones that's located in these sheltered tidal inlets along the coast. Now, worldwide, globally, harmful algae blooms is a major problem. So the idea is in the sea, there's a lot of algae, and when the conditions are right, when the temperature is right, when there's enough food for the algae, they can, under the right conditions, grow explosively into bloom. These are microscopic organisms, and they can cause discoloration of water. Some of these can swim, some are not, they don't swim. But globally, this is a big challenge, and when it occurs, it can lead to you don't have oxygen in the water, you can have toxic algae, you can cause skin and respiratory diseases, and so on. And in some ways, climate change also accentuated the harmful algae blooms. And the prediction is very difficult because unlike other parameters, you don't have big data in this business. And only very recently, we get more and more affordable sensors. So it is, when we started out doing this project, it's called Project Water Management. We had 2 objectives. One is that we would like to develop a method that can determine the carrying capacity for fish farm. In other words, how much fish can you actually stock, should you stock in a given environment, in a given coastal tidal inlet? And there's a lot of this for planning. Secondly, can we use some AI techniques to actually forecast the risk of these harmful algal blooms to the extent can you automatically detect the harmful species? So this is something we've been working on over the past decade. Now, one thing that we came to realize is really in these tidal inlets, imagine there's some algae here, there's some pollution here, and this will get flushed with the flood and ebb of tides out into the clean ocean, so to speak. And it may take a particle more than a month to move out to the outer ocean. So in other words, what we call the tidal flushing time is very important. If the tidal flushing time is long, in other words, the flushing rate is slow, then the algae has a chance to grow. There's a system. And so we develop a way to compute, to actually determine the tidal flushing time and tidal flushing rate in any kind of coastal inlet. And coupled with ecosystem models, we are able to determine for the 26 fish culture zones in Hong Kong, which are spread all over Hong Kong in tidal inlets. And we can determine in each of these fish culture zones what is the estimated capacity both in the summer and the winter. So this is a science-based management approach for sustainable mariculture, and it all relies on the understanding of both fluid mechanics and how the ecosystem behaves. And this method has been adopted by the Hong Kong government and has been endorsed as a best practice by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. So this is on the planning level. We grasp some understanding through a lot of field observations and technology. Now, the other aspect of it is to develop an early warning system. And we had in mind, this is about 10 years ago, something like this. Suppose is there a way to combine hydrodynamic models which predict the water movement on any given day and at any given point? This is the Pearl River estuary. And combine this with the past hydrometeorological data, the real-time field data, with some process understanding, some physical, biological understanding, to predict on a daily basis, what is the risk of algal bloom in this region, in this region, or in this region. And believe me, if we can predict the risk even a couple of days in advance, you can do a lot to mitigate disasters. Very often when a massive red tide occurs, it becomes a social shock. Nobody knows what's happening. In fact, usually you don't have any data and it's like a lot of these environmental disasters. So we would like to develop this, and once you know the risk, you can do a lot of things, predict where it will go and so on. So now I have to say, this is an idea, and only very recently, the instruments, more affordable instruments have been available, and we've been actually able to forecast the daily risk of, let's say, high risk, low risk, medium risk, etc., on a daily basis on a fish farm. So this is actually put into practice, on a specific fish farm. Now, what I want to show you is predicting the risk is only one thing. What is of interest is actually to know whether you have a toxic species in the sea. So what we've developed is an instrument actually we acquired from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Cape Cod, and we developed this, put it into the sea. We developed AI technique. This instrument allows you to image, to look in the sea continuously at 30,000 images per hour. And so through this, you can develop a technique. We've developed a actual supervised learning technique to classify these images and with a 90% success rate. So this is just an example where these continuous measurements really show you for different species, like these are dinoflagellates, algae that can move and algae that cannot move. And in fact, at the species level, we have about 25 target species, and it will tell you the abundance of these species continuously at a single point. I mean, this is still at a research stage, but we've demonstrated this to work and in real time. And so this opens up many possibilities, AI chips, a lot of possibilities that can, in fact, I believe you can make a business out of it. But right now, we've proven it to work in the field. We've closely worked with the agriculture, fisheries, and conservation department to do this. And so we're very happy to reach this stage after 15 years, after we had this idea after 15 years. So kind of a closing remark is I believe AI can be a powerful tool to adapt to climate-induced impacts. This, of course, requires a lot of interdisciplinary research and close collaboration between policymakers, academics, and industry. And overall, there's a great need for more investments in monitoring of coastal ecosystems, because very often when you deal with global climate change, the data you need is just not there. And there's a need for long-term measurements to do this. And we've turned research into practice in a couple of problems that have contributed to the sustainable development in Hong Kong. So right now I work in Macau, and recently, which is only 60 kilometers from Hong Kong, and recently we've been awarded a National Observation and Research Station of Coastal Ecological Environment, approved by MOST. We are developing a ministry-level key laboratory of intelligent water management, grouping our IT colleagues, systems engineering colleagues together to make a go at it. And if any of you are interested, you would be very welcome to contact me. We would very much welcome collaboration and learn from colleagues in the audience. So with that, Juhi, that's all I have to say. Juhi, please. Yes.
Professor Lee, thank you so much. There was so much great content in there, and quite amazing to actually see a little bit of the engineering whiz that you must be in order to come up with this kind of innovative solution. So let me kick off by asking you perhaps a question related to policy, which is one of the things that we are all learning about the dramatic impact of climate change is that even with the commitments that many countries are making, the United Nations continues to talk about the emissions being still rising at a much higher rate than is something that the Earth can tolerate. So I'm curious, were you listening to the COP26 conversations? Did you hear anything that suggested that technology would be used at a more accelerated pace in order to try to provide the kind of solutions that you have just shared with us? And what would be your thoughts of what is really needed in order to get us to accelerate this process, that we start to utilize technology in quite an aggressive fashion to combat climate change? Thank you.
Thank you, Juhi. I think COP26, I think the important thing to me is the awareness that it brings to, that all the important decision makers are realizing this is business as usual is no option, because otherwise they predict it's real. If business as usual by the end of the century will be 2.7 degrees centigrade, there's nothing you can do, right? So, but if you can keep it to 1.5 degrees centigrade, then there's a hope we can slowly, gradually adapt to climate change. And I want to reiterate this awareness is very important, because to most people, I would say 2 to 3 degrees centigrade seems like a very small number change. But in fact, the Earth's balance is very delicate. I can quote from experience. In fact, some of the massive red tides that occur in our part of the world has to do with only a 1 degree rise, anomaly of 1 degree centigrade. And it triggered off, it was, of course, you see, the global warming affects the atmospheric circulation, which in turn affects the ocean circulation, which affects the reflectivity of the Earth. So it's a very complicated system that not many people really grasp fully. But the fact is, even a very small change is a very fine balance, can trigger many of things we've seen. And in fact, the conclusion is that the whole world will be seeing more and more extreme events. And in fact, in Hong Kong, that's what we've been seeing, more and more extreme rainfalls. And of course, droughts are no exception, right? Droughts and rainfall. Now, personally, I think conservation is still the key, especially for urban resilience. I believe conservation is still the key. Just take, for example, every city spends a lot of energy pumping water around, just pumping, especially in hilly terrain. You pump water to your household, you pump water from reservoirs to your apartment, etc. So, but overall, globally in cities, you actually there's anywhere from 10 to 30% leakage underground water that you don't know. So I guess a lot of people are trying to crack this, even this problem. You can save a few percent. There's a lot of carbon, a lot of energy already. So I believe, of course, new materials, new energy, renewable energy would be a key also. And our government is pursuing steadfastly on this track. I mean, electric vehicles will be the thing, right? That there's no turning around PV cells and so on. But ultimately, sustainability reflects the individual behavior, right? So I think I would say water conservation is still the key, and there's a lot of innovation and technology and business opportunity surrounding conservation. I mean, even detecting these leaks underground. I mean, it's been a long-standing problem worldwide, and yet we are still in search of a good method, because these things are underground. You can't just open up underground. It's not a trivial thing. So I would say, just a short answer to your kind of what you suggest is that the Greater Bay Area I just show you is aimed to be carbon neutrality is a major thing. So it's green development. I mean, these will green finance in relation to economists will be there will be a lot of opportunities. So in general, I think there's a tendency towards, even in our engineering problems, nature-based solutions, more combination. And so I would say there's a lot of emphasis in governments worldwide, prompted by these UN conferences, that you must take action. And there's even in the policy sector, there's a lot of positive directions. So just for example, in Hong Kong, we've even in our design work, we've allowed for climate change scenarios. So for example, one effect with policies in your design, do you allow for climate change scenarios? For example, IPCC scenarios. What if this happens? Then is this enough? These are kinds of questions which I see are factored into policy making right now. But I don't think this is done in every country. I don't think so. But I think through these international summits, you actually can start a dialogue and get people thinking, and it's a good exchange of best practices and ideas. So Juhi, I'll just leave it at that. Yes.
Thank you very much for that. We have a question from Mike Luca, who wants to know, are there any opportunities you see for economists to be interested in this area? We economists love to put our nose into everything. So what role do you think economists have to play in coming up with either helping facilitate solutions for adaptation or for mitigation? Or is it to think about the economics of climate change? Or is it to think about, I know that I can tell you and vouch for some of the work I'm doing as an economist on climate change, is we're thinking a lot about concentration risk of companies and their operations in areas that are severely impacted. I mean, you mentioned flooding. We know large parts of the world live on coasts, and there are so many areas that are now increasingly will face these issues. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about that, but we're also spending a lot of time thinking about the other side, which is the one you presented today, that suggests what will happen if we were to actually see investments, use of technology in order to find solutions that help mitigate some of the impact of this, severe, more extreme weather patterns that we're seeing. So those are a couple of examples from my side. And I was glad that you mentioned Woods Hole, because Wellington has a partnership with Woodwell Climate Research Center, and we work extensively with them on some of this. But I think to answer Mike's question more generally will be of interest as to what do you think the role of economists can be in this area?
Yes, thank you for the question. In fact, my limited understanding of economists, actually, I think that the approaches of solving problems are converging. I mean, I see many economists, their writings are very systems thinking. Modeling, of course, economists are mathematicians somewhat. So now, relating to this flood risk, I do have a couple of points to make. One is, I go to these places where we designed quite a bit, and you see, if you design let's say a flood control scheme for extreme events, what it means is most of the time it's not used, right? Most of the time. So it's actually sometimes difficult to quantify exactly what is the benefit, because I don't think you can use expected benefits in this kind of approach, right? And I understand there's something called value at risk. I've had colleagues who talk about these things. So I would say for these extreme events, it is very difficult to quantify the benefits, because the benefits are very much not in the traditional sense. For example, the Happy Valley storage scheme that I talked about, with that scheme, what it means is people can go horse racing Wednesday nights, when otherwise they cannot. Now, besides the $1 billion revenue generated by, for public good by the horse racing, it is a culture, it's a social sustainability thing. So how do you quantify this? Besides, you can, of course, quantify flood damages and so on. So I see for these extreme events, exactly how you quantify the benefits. I think there's a lot of room for research so that we can articulate the benefits better for policymakers. And data is difficult to get by. I do believe sometimes I wonder if you use a traditional approach, it may end up not a lot of benefit, right? But the benefit is real. I mean, it's the whole thing. So I would think that's the first part. The other part is I see a lot of business opportunities personally, but it's even in this fisheries management. So right now, what I've shown, for example, is a very elaborate system. Over 1.5 million Hong Kong, several hundred thousand US. So a fish farm, and it's very sophisticated instrument that I don't think a fish farmer can use. Okay, but what if you imagine a very cheap AI chip that can allow a fish farmer to do that? I think we need. This relates also to green finance, business models. So I believe there's a lot of room. In fact, my colleagues into this for better articulation, for better quantification, and for actually to look at the benefit side from a more creative point of view. So I'm not sure if I exactly answered the question, but at least just a few thoughts to share, Juhi.
Very thoughtful, Professor Lee. Maybe if we could go a little bit further and think about, let's say we have the good fortune of having you come back 5 years from now. And we are further along. We've seen some acceleration, I hope, in this process of thinking about decarbonization, thinking about adaptation and mitigation and all of these strategies. What kinds of things are you working on today, or are in your head as you think about that you believe you would be coming back and sharing with us and sort of saying, well, be on the lookout because I can see us making step changes in X or Y or Z? What would that be?
Well, that would be, broadly speaking, what we'll be working on in the next 5 years. And, you know, at the closing slide, I've invited collaboration with all those interested. We are, together with the colleagues in Beijing, we are developing, and colleagues in computer science and business economics, we are developing a key laboratory of what we call intelligent water management, smart water management, because I believe AI, I mean, there have been a lot of attempts to use AI in water. I mean, water is a big area, especially in this part of the world. But I'm not sure, forgive me by saying this, but I'm not sure that the essence of it is captured fully. You know, I mean, it's like a technique in search of a problem. You see my point? But in reality, I see a lot of startup companies in AI connected with water, autonomous ships, ships to clean up our water surface. And the whole idea, even flood management, to use AI to create early warning system in villages. I mean, the application is endless. I see companies doing this, and so we all know, for example, countries like Singapore created a whole economy out of water, and you know, I'm sure you can this opportunity. There will be a lot of opportunities for AI, especially, which is a national strategy in many countries. But AI and water, I believe, is only at the beginning. I mean, you see AI applied to many fields like speech recognition, autonomous driving, autonomous systems, but for various reasons, because I think in a lot of the civil infrastructure, you cannot afford to make mistakes, you know, so that, I mean, you know, it has to work. And I hope, in a way, I've conveyed that spirit. Engineers, I mean, we are not unlike economists, I would suggest, in terms of methodologies, in terms of testing hypotheses, and so on, experiments, and so on. So I guess, you know, I just would like to end with this welcoming kind of note, and you know, and I believe we do need, for me, for example, I have to learn many new things to be able to talk with economists, right? Talk with other people. So it is challenging, Juhi, as well, but also challenge. So 5 years from now, I would look forward to a lot more startup companies, you know, in AI and water. We would be, in some areas, more sustainable, I hope. Some really new technology that allow us to save water. I would think so. Also in terms of policy, maybe more. You know, one big area of climate change induced impacts is sea level rise and coastal defense. In fact, in Macau, we are designing these storm surge barriers because we've had very bad flooding cases a few years ago. So it means sea level rise is still a puzzle because you need a long-term record. And so I would say these will still remain issues, but the whole world, I'm aware of countries which are willing to invest large billions of dollars of money for research, just in case, you know, somebody asks that, what if the sea level rises by 0.6 meters or by 1 meter? Because the whole of Greater Bay Area would be under threat. We're very vulnerable. So I hope these are just hypotheses, but you know, these are risks that we will learn more to deal with. I guess that's.
I think there's a lot in there, a lot of food for thought for all of us, and I do believe that the transformation of the challenges that so many different parts of the world are facing, thanks to the climate changes that are occurring, can really, in large part, only be solved through the use of technology. That we have to be, and we have to collectively take on the responsibility. We're not prepared enough. This is sort of my pet peeve on this. We're simply not prepared for the changes that are coming, and it is going to take enormous amount of ingenuity from people like yourself to get us there. So Professor Lee, on behalf of everyone here at NABE at the TEC conference, we want to thank you for starting your day off so early so that you could be with us here late in the evening in the East Coast and in the afternoon in the West Coast. Thank you so much for spending the time. We absolutely look forward to having you come back another time. And from on behalf of the entire staff at NABE and the board, I want to just say it's been a fantastic day of conversations, and we look forward to welcoming you back tomorrow for another great set of events. So take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I leave now.